Hey, it's Ethan, and in this video we're going to be going over make.com APIs from start to finish. So in this video we're going to be talking about why APIs are important, the different types of API requests that you can create, and we're actually going to demo a couple and set up the APIs directly inside of make.com. I'm going to show you a couple different functionalities like integrating with Google Sheets, posting social media posts via API, etc., etc. So before we dive into actually how we're going to set them up, the reason APIs are important is because it gives you access to more apps, right? So if you didn't know this, make.com is essentially just a nice user interface for APIs, right? Every single app that you see inside of make.com is essentially just a nicely packaged API, right? So if we go inside of make.com here, all of these apps are just make.com's native API integration. So if we click add a module here, doesn't want to set it up, but like this Google Sheets module, this is make.com's API, and any of the other modules that you're going to connect to inside of make.com, they're all basically just APIs, right? And so that means that you're limited by the apps that make.com allows you to access to, and you're limited by the requests that they have set up for you. And what this means is, like, inside of this, for example, like this Google Sheets request, if we add a module here, I'm not sure why this is not working. Like, basically you can add a row, you can search rows. These are the different types of requests that you can do inside of make.com. And if you understand APIs, you have a much more versatile, large range of different requests that you can set up. So there's a couple core requests that you'll need to know. There's the get request, post, and delete. So a get, you can basically think of this as retrieving information from a different software. So there's information on that software and you're just retrieving the information. Post is the exact opposite. You want to alter that software in some way. Maybe it's Google Sheets, you want to create a new row. You'd create a post request that would create a new row, or maybe you're connecting to a community API and you want to create a new post on that community. You'd use a post request. A put is pretty similar, but this put request is actually where you will be updating information. So say you have like a post on a community, a put request would basically say, like, what is the ID of that post? You would give it that ID and then you would say what you want to change the post to, and it would find that post and update the content of it. And now a delete is pretty self-explanatory. So now I actually want to go into make.com and set up some API requests. So inside of make.com, what you need to know is that anytime you want to set up an API request, you're going to be using the HTTP request module. And in order to know how to set it up, like what the specific parameters that you're going to add into this request are, which we'll look at in a second, you're going to need to have access to that API's documentation. We'll go into that as well. And then JSON is how you will actually pass that content into the API request. So inside of make.com, you have a couple different requests that you can set up here, but the core one here is the HTTP request. So I'm going to restart this. Make.com is being unresponsive on me here, but we're going to start by setting up an HTTP request. There we go. It's finally allowing me to. All right, so we'll have these different types of requests that we can create. You're going to create an HTTP and you're going to click make a request. And so now let's set up a basic request. We're going to be using this API from API Ninjas called the Quotes API. This is going to be a very basic one to learn how to set it up. So if you go to api-ninjas.com, you'll be able to go to their API directory and go to the Quotes API. So there's a couple different aspects of an API, right? We have the URL, which is telling the HTTP request where that API lives. Then you have the different types of requests that we just talked about that you can do here. A get, post, put, delete. You don't really need to know any of the others. The header, this is where we're going to put the API key. And then the body is where we're going to, if we're creating a post request, add in the JSON parameters. This will all make sense as we are diving into this. So we're going to create a get request because that is the easiest request to create. We're going to add in this URL in the URL section. Every API is going to have their own URL. So we have that URL in here. And then the headers, it will usually tell you how to create the header. So inside of the headers, it's going to be X API key and then your API key. So on API Ninjas, if you want to create an API key, you're just going to create a basic account. Once you create an account, you'll get you'll be redirected to a page that looks like this. You're going to show API key, copy, and paste it in here. So now this API request, it's very simple. We have the URL, and we have the API key, and then it's get. So this is one of the most simple API requests you'll ever make. And so once we add that in, we run it, we're going to get our response with our quote here, with our author, and the category. So you can see here that the response is just this big block of JSON. It just looks like some JSON code with a couple strings in here. So something that's important is you're always going to want to parse your response. So if you click this see this parse response boolean down here and toggle it to yes, that will allow you to turn whatever the response is into objects inside of make.com. So now you can see it looks a lot better. We have the quote here with the string, we have the author, we have the category. It's a lot easier to parse out. So in order to show you how we can use this information inside of make.com scenario, I want to start by actually creating a Google Sheets document, or we'll actually do this. So the Google Sheets document that we're going to create is just called random quote generator, and I want us to just create a couple columns. So you can just create a new Google Sheets, and the columns here are going to be directly related to whatever the data is that we're pulling from this API request. So we're pulling a quote, an author, a category. So we want to pull quote, author, and category. So inside of this sheet, we're going to create quotes, author, and category. And now if we go back to make.com, we're actually going to pull this information from the API request into a new row. So we're going to click add a new row, add a row. We're going to find that spreadsheet that we just made, random quote generator. And then we're going to pull the data from this API request into this Google Sheets. So we have the quote here, we have the quote, we have the author, we have the category. So this shows you that you can get data as a response from an API request, and then you can just bring it straight into your scenario and start using it for different things. And so what we're going to do here is we're actually going to create a repeater module so that we can get multiple different quotes at once. So you're going to drag this over here. Let's do 10 different quotes. Now what this is going to do is going to run 10 times. It's going to send 10 get requests, and it's going to take the responses of every single request and add it into Google Sheets. So we can see here 2, 3, it's just pulling quotes into this scenario. So you can see that this could be pretty valuable for a use case. You could also create like some sort of user app where a person clicks a button and then it sends a get request and it responds with a quote, right? There's a lot of different ways you can integrate API requests into your scenarios. So now that we understand the basics of a get request, we're going to go into a slightly more complicated request, which is a post request, which requires that we add JSON into the body here. So let's create a new HTTP module and then make a request. And this time we're going to access something called Typefully. So this is one that I've used often in my scenarios, right? So I have a couple different social media scenarios where I'm creating Twitter threads, and I've tried to connect with Twitter's native API, but they have a lot of they have really strict rate limits. They have a bunch of OAuth things that make it a little bit more difficult. And every time I've tried to create a Twitter thread using the Twitter API, I've been able to create a post really easily, but when I want to actually thread it, it gets way more complicated. So I actually found this app called Typefully, which is the best app that I've found for scheduling out threads. And they have a really solid API where you can actually just take a block of text and create a Twitter thread from it. And so that's what we're going to be connecting today. So we're going to be connecting the Typefully API. So you can just create a Typefully account, and you can get their API integrations here. So we can go into their API, which I have access to here, and we can take their API keys from here. So this is going to be a little bit different to set up, but whenever you go into the documentation for an API, you're just going to go and you always want to find the API root URL first. So that's the root URL, and we're going to add that as the URL. Then we're going to find whatever the header is. We're going to add that here. So we have the header is X API, and then bearer Typefully API. And then we're going to replace that with our API key. So we're going to go boom, replace that with our API key. And then what we're going to do here is once we have the API key in here, we're going to actually create a post request this time, because we want to create a new Twitter thread, create a new draft on Typefully. So there's the create a draft one here. So this is something that we didn't do in the last one because it wasn't necessary, but you're going to see every single API request is going to have a different URL here at the end, like a sub URL. So this one is v1-drafts. So that just basically means that we have the root URL and then it's v1-drafts. And we're just adding this into the end of the URL. Now these are the different JSON payloads that we will add. This basically means that these are the different parameters that we can add in. We can choose if we want to threadify it, which I'll explain what that is in a second. If we want to have auto retweet enabled, if we want to like what the content is. So this one is required because it's the content. And so let's just create this request. So what we're going to do is create a body type as raw, set that to JSON, content type is JSON. And then inside of the request content, this is where the JSON goes. If you don't know what JSON is, it's not too difficult to learn. If you're getting stumped on the JSON, just ask ChatGPT to like write me JSON for an API request. And something that I've done very often is I can just like Command A this entire API, add it into ChatGPT or Claude, and I can say, here's the documentation for an API. Help me write an API request, and it will literally show you exactly how to write the JSON payload if you're getting. Okay, my camera just died there, so we're back. So let's create this as a JSON. So inside of the JSON, it's going to be a forward bracket and a backwards bracket. So we're going to have these two brackets here, and then inside of it we're going to create different objects. So you can kind of see here what that looks like. We have these two quotes, and then we have the name, and then we have these two quotes and the content, right? So what we want to do here is create the content inside of quotes, a colon, and then this is where the variable will go. So we'll have the variable or the text, in this case it's a tweet. And then if you want to create more variables, so this will be, this API request will work. If we want to create more objects such as threadify, you could just create this, a comma, and then new line, threadify, and you could say like false or true because this is a Boolean, which means true or false. And so that's how you do that. So the next one here is we're going to add some text in here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to go to Claude, a new one here, and we're going to say write me a string of 200 words about AI agents. So I'm going to show you how to actually send the content over, and then we're going to actually threadify it. So this is just a bunch of content about AI agents, and what we can do is we can actually remove this comma, pass this and hard code this into the request, and now if we run this, you can see it was successful. There was the draft on here. So now if I go back to Typefully, you can see this draft is now inside of Typefully, and we created this post via API. So now something that Typefully does that's pretty interesting is you can threadify something, which basically means that you're splitting it automatically. So if I go like this, it's splitting it into different tweets, which this one, it cut a word off in the middle, which is kind of weird. But most of the time it works pretty well. So in this case, I would probably just like delete that. And so this is how like a super easy way to create Twitter threads like this. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to essentially say, like, a lot of times if we pass like a bad character, like if there's like a couple quotes in here or something, it will usually fail. Let's see if this fails. Yeah, it'll usually fail because JSON requires specific things, right? Or if we add too many new lines like that, I think this might fail as well. Because in JSON, if you want to create a new line, you have to do like a new line like this, and you don't want too many quotes. So let's say that we have a a couple quotes in here. We want to figure out how to like still have a quote inside of our tweet, right? So we're going to need to convert this to JSON. So let's actually start building out a little bit of a content schedule here to show you one of the potential use cases. So just create a new Google Sheet called like Typefully Content Scheduling System. I started building this out. This is the third take of this video. So we're just going to create a new Google Sheet, call it like Xthreads Scheduling System. We're going to create a content one, and then we're going to create a status column called like added to Typefully. And what we're going to do is we're going to search rows in Google Sheets, search rows. We're going to connect this here, and then we're going to find that spreadsheet so we can just like pull data from it. Typefully Xthreads Scheduling System. We're going to grab the first sheet. We're basically going to filter by if added to Typefully exists. And then anytime we add something to Typefully, we're then going to update a row. We're going to find that specific sheet. And once we find that sheet, we're going to get the row number from the first module, and we're going to say true. We're going to add it to Typefully equals true. So now what happens is we can actually add this text in here. Now add in a couple characters that would make a JSON, that would break a JSON object. I'm not sure if it'll understand this request. Okay, so I think it actually will if I just add all of this in there. So let's say we add this as the content. And we go Command X. We add this in. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to, rather than passing hard-coded content, let me just run this module to get the data in our scenario. Why did it say 0? We should get added to Typefully. Oh, does not exist. That's why. We want to make sure that it only finds the ones that don't exist. We have the rows here now. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to, it didn't actually get that. Sometimes it's weird like this. You have to unconnect it, reconnect it. Or if we just run the scenario once, it's probably going to break because there's no content. We basically just want to get, there we go. So inside of this JSON request, inside of the content here, we're going to plug in the content as the request. So now what we can do is we can basically just like add, create an API request, create a new draft in Typefully directly from Google Sheets. So if I do this, it broke, right? Because it was one of the wrong characters, right? So this is where it actually helps to, what we can do is we can add a module here. And we can create a JSON module and transform to JSON. This basically means that if there's anything that would break a JSON string or JSON object, we're going to add that instead. So rather than this, I believe it's going to add quotation marks automatically. So we're just going to add the content and then the JSON string directly in here. So let's see if this will work now. So boom. So now you can see that rather than it breaking because there was a JSON string, it basically converted it. So let me show you what that looks like. So for the first one, see, it puts a backslash in front of every single quote. And if there's a new line, it will put like a backslash new line. So this is important, right? So if there's strings that you're adding in that could break an API request, you just want to transform that text into JSON before you pass it into the API request. So now that you've passed it into the API request, the next thing that you want to do is, as you can see, we updated the rows. So now we can just say like this was scheduled. So let's say we want to build like a social media scheduling system. So let's say we want to threadify this. So one of the things that we can do inside of Typefully is we can threadify something. I want to actually see what other, yeah. So let's like threadify this. So if we create a new object called threadify, and we're going to set it to true. Let's see what that does. Likely, it's already running. What? Okay, there we go. So threadify. It looks like it's probably not going to work if it's taking this long. Or because we don't have any. Yeah, it's null. That's why. So we're going to actually have to remove this. We need to make sure there's at least one row that it's going to pull. Let's run it one more time. And boom, it threadified it this time because threadify is equal to true. So boom, first tweet, second tweet. We updated those. So now if we go back to Typefully, you can see that this is the response that we got, right? AI agents, it's threadifying this. So now it's just automatically converting this long string of text into a bunch of tweets into a thread format. So now let's say we actually want to publish a tweet, or we want to schedule it out. So one of the things that I love about Typefully is you can actually schedule to the next slot. So this will just like say, you can put however many slots you want. This is like 2 per day. You can basically just add as many requests as you want into Typefully, and it will just schedule it out on a twice per day basis. So this, I've actually done this manually inside of Airtable, which is very possible as well. There's a couple ways you can use make.com variables to do this, but I find it really helpful to just do it directly inside of Typefully. So let's say we have like 20 different blocks of text that we generate, and we want to create 2 threads per day on it. So now let's just let's go back to ChatGPT and then create me another block of text, this time about AI in general. Create me another block of text about AGI. All right, so boom, artificial intelligence, boom, boom, boom. So we're gonna add this into here. We're gonna add this into here. And now this time what we're going to do is we're going to schedule it out. So we're gonna threadify as true, and you can see that we're just pulling in these different objects based on as we need them, right? So the scheduled date is the next one. So we're gonna create a comma scheduled date. And then inside of this scheduled date, we could technically put like an actual like date like this in here. But what I want to actually do is use Typefully's schedule next. So when you go into the description of these, you can start to see like how to do this. So this one is like, what is the type? It's string, or we can use the next free slot one. And then it will tell you how the date needs to be formatted. So formatted date needs to be year dash month dash day time, specific time, or next free slot. So I believe we're gonna have to put this in quotes, but if we put next free slot in here now, this should, let's just say we schedule 2 more. What it should do is just schedule them directly. So now if we go to Typefully, what it did here, you can see it threadified these, and then it scheduled them out automatically. So imagine how valuable this could be if you're creating a AI marketing system for someone, and what you're basically doing is you're pulling in, you're creating copy for them, and once you really refine the prompt engineering, then you can basically just add as many different blocks of text that you generated into this system, and we'll just schedule out 2 Twitter threads per day. You could also schedule it out to be a LinkedIn post as well, which I believe, I wonder if there's a way to do that inside the API, or if you're just going to need to do it manually. Looks like threads, tweets. So it looks like we can actually get the notifications. So let's try to get notifications from my account and see if that actually works too. That would be pretty interesting. So now let's just do a get request. And as you can see, the APIs are really versatile once you figure out how to use them. So let's do like notifications. It's going to be a get request. We don't want anything here, so this is empty. And then boom. Is it going to work? Boom. It gave me, it looks like a LinkedIn notification. So this is pretty interesting. We can get notifications from Twitter and LinkedIn. So you can see like now these notifications are directly inside of my Make scenario. I can do anything that I want with these. I can forward these to Slack. I mean, I don't see why you'd want to forward notifications from LinkedIn to Slack. But let's say like you can connect anything that you want and create your own custom applications, because now you can pull information from any software that has an API. So I really hope that this video is valuable for you. If you're interested in this type of stuff and want to dive deeper in how to build this into agent architectures, prompt engineering, etc., you can join the free school community. Inside of the free school community, you'll get an onboarding call with me, and you'll be able to access the different courses that we have. So we have an AI Agents Mastery course. We go deep into prompt chaining, different types of workflows regarding AI agents. We go deep into prompt engineering, how to assign roles, how to prompt chain, that sort of stuff. And then you can get all the system templates as well. So any of the videos here that you want to get the templates for, I'll add the template for this video directly in here, so you can actually just get the different API modules from this into a template. You can grab that inside of the school community. So just sign up for that for free with the link in the description here. And I look forward to connecting with you inside of school. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.